If you enjoy this content, please take a moment to rate and review it. Your feedback will greatly impact our ability to reach more people. Thank you. How's it going, man?
It's going well. Excited for the show today. A lot to talk about.
Yep. Back in Mexico City, got some nice feedback after episode 200, which was really cool. Me too. I'm ready to dig in. So let's jump right into it. Very first story, Trump's tariffs. What Trump's latest tariffs mean for the American economy. I have to admit, I am both slightly confused and also feeling like I'm getting the gist of things even more than ever before. What did the Supreme Court say about the tariffs the first time around?
The Supreme Court said that the first version, whatever the statute was that Trump used, was not allowed, and the administration found a new pathway, basically, which to me is not surprising. Yep. The U.S. president has lots of levers to pull, and so the one he's using now has, I think, more restrictions and it's harder to execute, but it ends up in the same place, basically.
So he's found a different basis upon which to execute this new round of tariffs. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, which was used during the first term, and so back to something that's more legally durable. I'm curious as to your thoughts as to whether or not this is currently politically positive heading into the midterms.
I don't think it's positive heading into the midterms. No, I mean, I think Trump is interested in using tariffs to kind of reshape how America interacts with our trading partners that, in his view, would have a benefit long term, but it's short term, definitely not positive, in my opinion.
Yeah. I really did not expect for the tariffs to return so swiftly. I have to say, I didn't expect it, but I have been for some time now just wondering when we're going to have a real shoe drop around the fact that largely our GDP really is not growing at a rate that covers our debt service, and it feels to me that the fact that he has gone back to the tariffs, even though I don't believe it is positive for the midterms, and I think we're close enough now to the midterms where you would expect him to be doing anything he could to be positive for the midterms, given the latest polymarket odds. It seems that we're getting some real clarity that the United States of America is in a very serious situation from a fiscal perspective. And I say this as a continuation of last week's conversation around what are these hospitals going to do. It's very clear that the government does not intend to continue the spending into the healthcare system as it has before. And I think pairing that along with these tariffs to me says, okay, yes, entitlements is a huge contributor to the current situation we're in fiscally, right? And tariffs will generate net new top line revenue. And these things just tell me this is a president acting from a CEO posture in a wartime stature, and I don't mean wartime like Iran or Ukraine. I mean wartime like your P&L is very upside down. And you just have to do what you have to do to get it to start to turn the corner on it. And I think we may see more things like this that are going to be very politically unpopular, but probably the cohort of Besant and Warsh and Trump are saying necessary. It's just going to be necessary because, when do we ever see the story about our deficit or about our national debt or about the fact that our GDP growth is not sufficient to cover our debt service? Do we ever see that story anywhere?
Not in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, in crypto, you see it a lot.
Right.
In X you see it, and I mean, but not in mainstream. No.
Yeah, and to me, I think that's what's going on here, right? I think it's the reason why this is just going to be emotional for people is our media has no interest in covering, and maybe it's important because maybe that would just sort of show the hand of America, right? If you just covered the fact that that we're upside down, you know what I mean? That we're upside down, and the debt is only going to go up and to the right until we stop being upside down. But it's an entitlements versus revenue issue, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know. I wouldn't say that's the whole story, but I think that's a significant part of the story. I think the other part that I believe I see is that after World War II, the Europe was devastated. Japan was devastated. China was much, much smaller. And so the U.S. was really the last economy that was very strong. And for 50 years, we had this concept that we need to strengthen the global economy, and that will result in the U.S. doing better. And I think Trump has changed that. And these tariffs are a symbol of that. I think the pressure being applied on healthcare. I mean, Emily spoke at a thing this week, and she rattled off the money being taken out of the system. Mm-hmm. And when you list it on, I mean, so Medicaid work requirements, 340B being changed and disallowed, supplemental payments. We're going to cover later the prescription benefit subsidies. The U.S. federal government, really with only the executive branch acting, not with Congress because they're not able to do anything, they are removing significant blocks of money from the healthcare system.
Right.
And yes, that will maybe benefit our debt. But then the tariffs, and then I think also the sovereign wealth fund, or however you want to frame it, we took a position in Intel where we're starting to as a country take ownership positions, and really it's sort of the U.S. focus and almost against the rest of the world, or not worrying about the rest of the world. The Trump administration is trying to, now whether he does it go to bad, I think the goal is to benefit the United States and change the playing field. We're now the U.S. is going to exert its power for its own benefit, not for the benefit of the entire globe. And whether that's right or not, I think that's the trend line.
Yeah.
The debt probably is a piece of that, but I don't think it's the only piece.
Yeah, fair. So continuing with that, and the tariffs, I think are, the tariffs plus the war are signals that we are clearly in a fiscal dominance era. How things are going to work in our economy is largely captured in the executive branch. You might say the legislative branch, but they don't have any power right now. So it's all really in the White House. If they could
get their act together, they could be powerful, but
but they can't.
Right.
Yeah, they can't get their act together. So I think we continue to see Chairman Warsh leading the Fed in a way that is trying to re-script the narrative of, maybe not only the Fed's power, but maybe even the Fed's underlying purpose, right? So the Fed is holding rates steady. It was a split vote, so clearly, the inflation is creating some healthy debate at these meetings. But you watched the press conference, right? And what was your take on Warsh's comments?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think he is trying to really reshape the Fed in many ways. And at the press conference, he was, he does his thing where he's not willing to give guidance going forward. So a lot of the answers are, political speak, really saying not that much. But the one interesting part was he pointed out that the market-driven rates that the Fed does not control, so the 2-year Treasury, the 5-year Treasury, the 30-year Treasury, they have moved up since the last meeting. And he thinks, and I think he's right, that is a constraint on growth and will begin to reduce inflation without the Fed having to take action. So he can, in a sense, he can hold his action because the markets are maybe not doing it for him, but they're beginning to work on that. And that's pretty interesting. And I think that's right. And it definitely is a position where he's not saying the Fed is all powerful and the only force that matters, which sort of the previous Fed chairmen have either said or implied. And then a couple of weeks ago, he rolled out, I think it was 6 different committees to study how the Fed does its work. And he pulled in people from the outside. It's not Fed insiders to really think through, how do we collect data? How do we view, the money supply? Fed chairmen have not talked about M2 money supply for decades. I mean, since the 90s, Greenspan went away from that. And the money supply, I think, is an important driver to inflation, but they have never been willing to say that, and he said that out loud. So bringing in new people, and these are market participants. They're people that are technologists and going to hopefully be able to collect better data on. I mean, we've talked forever about the labor markets are not great, the CPI is not great. We know these systems are not working right. But Warsh is the first chairman to say, well, let's pull in some people that are real experts and get their opinion on how we can do this better. I think it's going to be a little bit bumpy or chaotic because the Fed's a very kind of, old, established, traditional institution, and he's kind of, moving things around pretty quickly. But in the end, I think it'll be for the better.
Yeah. I so far, I actually kind of like the way that he's managing the situation. And it does feel, I think, more independent than people thought it would. So that's also pretty encouraging to me. It will be interesting to see how inflation behaves over the next 30, 60 days. And whether or not this sort of drives a serious shift in direction around a rate hike. I mean, it's interesting, right? It doesn't feel like risk-on assets need a lot of help right now. Valuations are very, very frothy across the market, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and I don't have confidence that the Fed can easily create jobs. Like, their methodology to create jobs would be to lower rates. Somehow that would flow through risk assets and create jobs. I don't see how that connection still exists. I think that's not so much there. So I think it makes sense to really focus on inflation.
Yep, agreed. Let's cover the hyperscalers and the cloud revenue. Last week we talked about Google's incredible results. Microsoft profit jumps 31% as Azure cloud sales surpass 100 billion. I mean, just ridiculous numbers here. So Microsoft, their stock rose about 18% on the news. Just really, really strong results here. And then also Amazon shares jump as their cloud accelerates. They came in at 37% year over year growth, $42.2 billion. I mean, and AWS is, they are the foundation of this entire industry. So growing 37% year over year as the lead dog and the foundation. Cloud is just growing leaps and bounds right now.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think we're starting to see the effect of AI on these infrastructure plays, right? First, NVIDIA clearly benefited from the chipset, and now you're going kind of maybe up one level to the cloud infrastructure. Everyone, including us, are using more cloud because you need more cloud to run these models, and that is really benefiting the big 3 cloud providers.
VC rundown. Candid Health snags $120 million for AI RCM platform. This is a Series D. Round was led by 6th Street Growth with participation from Oak, 8VC, and Y Combinator. Always interesting to see Y Com on a late stage round like this. It's a revenue cycle management platform. So, we've seen a lot of these. We know it's a very frothy space, and $120 million Series D puts them in pretty rare air in terms of hitting a Series D, and as well as the size of the checks.
Yeah, no question. And they were pretty aggressive in this quote that was in the article that the legacy RCM players have not kept pace, and they're lightly sprinkling AI on top as opposed to sort of embedding it across everything. I think that's probably right. And they are going to try to catch up, but Candid does have a pretty good product. And I don't know, I mean, RCM is the best place to enter healthcare because it's the easiest place and the most directly tied to the bottom line. So that makes sense.
Yeah, but yes, and I just feel like there's so much capital going into it, right? So this 120 million feels like a blitzscaling, campaign to me. I just, I think there will be kind of a winner take most, kind of like R1 did, during the rebadging era of RCM. I think there will be a winner take most, and I think there's going to be a lot of capital where they get some return, but I don't think it's going to be the kind of return they're modeling. It's just hyper competitive. This is what I see at HFMA. There's so many vendors in this space right now, Vic. So many.
Yeah. And they've already made significant improvements over the past 20 years in revenue cycle management. They'll continue to, and I think AI will help. But really, I think it was like a beachhead. Then you have to expand into other parts of healthcare where really the operations are still pretty difficult.
Yeah, and look, let me just also say, like, Epic is in this space too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are in this space too. So I don't say that to say like they're going to eat the whole market, but they will have their fair share of it, and that's another sort of really, really, really tough competitor to be in the mix with. So, but congrats to them. Great round. Next story. This could be a large market. Novo Holdings backed Claris secures 118 million for corneal disease drugs. So this is Series B, focused on vision, focused on the eyes. And what do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's a I had not heard of it before this story, first of all, to be clear, but it's a drug that didn't succeed at its first indication. And then they found in the trials that a few of the participants that had really diminished eyesight, where they really can't see that well, got improvements in their eyesight. So they can see. It's called limbal stem cell deficiency, LSCD. So they now have pivoted and they're focusing on that. There's 30,000 patients in the United States that really, they're legally blind, they can't see, and there's no treatment for it today. So a lot of promise. It's exciting. I don't know, what the odds are. Typically, you pick the best indication first, and they kind of found this by chance. But it could be great if it really works.
Yep, agreed. And then I think the most fun story, and one that I'd heard about, and it's great to see them actually getting a nice slug of funding here. Smart toilet sensor Throne Science has raised $10 million in funding. It's a Series A, so congrats to them. The round was led by Will Ventures, participation from Emerson Collective, Moxie, Felix Capital, Cosmic Venture Partners, and Offscript. Emerson Collective, a really strong group. We've co-invested with them before. So this is a platform, Vic, that would be in the lovable diagnostic segment, where basically it's very, very easy, if not effortless, to continue to get some measurements around particular vitals or disease states. And this is an AI powered toilet camera. And it's, if you think about like smart scales, where they can tell who is stepping on them in the house, and then they can tell the difference if it's an actual member of the house or it's a guest. This kind of has all of those same basics that you would get in a smart scale, but it's got a camera that is basically analyzing stool and checking for changes and checking for particular issues. And so it's not going to properly diagnose colon cancer, but it can sort of be an indicator that you wouldn't normally have, that can be tracking your colon as well as your gut health. So I think this is super cool, and I'm happy to see them get this funding.
Yeah, I agree. I love these products that do not rely on the patient to change their behavior and yet meet the patient where they are, and then use technology, use really really innovative, creative ways to structure the cameras and the product in order to solve a problem that, the patient doesn't have to think about anymore. They put it in once and then it's just always there. And then maybe 5 years later, they get a warning, go see your doctor. You should check this out. That's great. Colorectal cancer is one of the biggest, it might be the biggest killer. And if you catch it early, it's much, much more treatable. So I think it's really good.
Agree. So congrats to them. I'm excited to see this advance, and also excited to see what the results are once it actually gets into major distribution. Moving into policy, so the FTC has sued Hims and Hers for sharing private health info with Meta and Snap. This is not terribly surprising to me, but the FTC filed a lawsuit against Hims and Hers on Wednesday, alleging that they disclosed sensitive health information with third parties, for targeting purposes. And it, I mean, I don't know if you've had this kind of thing, Vic, where you all of a sudden, like, you'll look on your phone and it's like sending you a bunch of stuff about kidney health or a particular kind of supplement or whatever, and it's like, did you hear a conversation I had? Like, how all of a sudden am I getting targeted with this information? I don't know, to me it's not that surprising, but it's great to see the FTC taking an action on it, because it's absolutely abhorrent behavior, and this kind of data sharing with private health information should never be allowed.
Yeah, definitely. And Hims and Hers kind of got the FTC's attention because customers were really unhappy for being charged and not really being given the telehealth visits. And so they were kind of aggressively growing their business and maybe not taking care of patients as well. That's how FTC got involved. And then they found this thing they could pursue. I agree. If they are using health data to target ads on Meta, I don't think that's allowed. You can't do that. So
no.
I mean, I've done 3 tests with various phones with friends and with my sons. If you talk about a topic, Meta and Instagram will serve you ads within an hour. Like, it's a fun test to do. You can make up some, very bizarre thing and start talking about it, and all of a sudden you start getting ads for that. We know they do that, but that's from the patient itself, or the user itself. Getting your physician to then target you for more is not appropriate.
Yeah, no, it's listen, I mean, this is one company that I just and by the way, I don't mean Hims and Hers, I mean Meta. That they're just so data hungry and are constantly, I think, in some level of violation of our rights to privacy and our rights to data sovereignty. And so, good for the FTC on this one. Big story this week: Trump administration to end Medicare drug plan subsidy. I mean, more bad news for the general public, for mid to lower income families that really are stretching their budgets very tightly and depending on the benefits as they understand them. This Medicare drug plan subsidy, I don't expect it to result in anything other than premiums being increased going forward, and just more difficulty for the Medicare program.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the Trump administration and Dr. Oz are sort of spinning it as they have reduced the cost of medications broadly, and so this is no longer needed. I think they have reduced the cost of medications, but I don't think that the subsidies are, I wouldn't say it's not needed. It's going to bring more pressure, more pain in cost to consumers that are already struggling. And so it's another way that government is taking money out of the system, really without thought of what the impact on people's going to be as far as access to medications, access to healthcare services, with some of the other things like Medicaid work requirements. It's a trend. They're doing all of these things, and I think they have a belief that the free market will step in and help, but I don't have that confidence that it will happen in the right timeline. I think we're going to have people left outside without access to the healthcare they need.
It seems that nothing will really stop this train. And I wonder, like, I don't know, Vic, but is there any mechanism by which, if there was a shift in control of the Senate, that the Senate would be able to stop the agenda of HHS and particularly of CMS when it comes to, you know, things like physician pay, or, you know, the handling of Medicare Advantage, or, you know, these subsidies? Like, is there any mechanism by which Senate can impair or slow down some of the, you know, these things that are just headwinds all the way around?
I mean, if the Democrats get both houses, they could pass legislation, you know, dictating what HHS should do. But that's kind of a long process. I don't think it's going to be that fast. And in the meantime, all these things are going to be rolled out. And I think it's going to be difficult to kind of put back in the bottle. The health systems and the payers and the ACA market, we'll talk about employers in a minute. All of these groups are going to have to make decisions end of this year, early next year. And, you know, even if the midterms are a landslide for the Democrats, they're still going to have to then pass legislation, which is going to be, you know, I don't know what their kind of group will be that has a majority, but it's going to be fractious. Even on the Democratic side, there'll be lots of competing things. So maybe they get something done in 8 months to a year. But then the president will have to sign it. And so
Right.
there's a lot of steps that I think are going to be, it's going to be more, I expect Congress to block the administration from doing new things and put them into lots of subpoenas and lots of maybe an impeachment again. They'll be able to like distract and stop new things more so than really fix these things that have already happened. That's my guess.
That tracks for me as well. And basically it just means there's going to be a lot more of this activity that's going to come over the course of the next 2 years. Right.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And then more to the point, a federal judge denied 25 states bid to block the Medicaid work rules. I think if we were to look at the states, they would largely be blue, maybe not entirely blue, but largely be blue states. You know, Massachusetts, California, New Jersey, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware. So yeah, it's, you know, it's looking like that. New York, North Carolina's purple, Pennsylvania. So yeah, a lot of blue states here. You know, obviously 25 states was a pretty strong block for the attorneys general to file you know, an injunction around these work requirements. But with this federal judge, Richard Stearns, blocking it, I think we're clear path for CMS to be able to get their final rule across the line. So
yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I thought it was kind of a, you know, a Hail Mary trying to pull this out of what is really just going to be the policy, unfortunately.
Moving on to the payer segment. Cigna bumps their outlook as Q2 profit reaches $1.7 billion. Total revenue reached $71.1 billion, up 7% from the same period in 2025. Adjusted income from operations was $2.1 billion, up from $1.9 billion. Seems like really strong results. The MLR was 84.5, an increase from 83.2. So obviously that's not great, but still, you know, far below the 90s that were plaguing all the payers throughout all of last year. So generally speaking, seems like a good result for Cigna.
Yeah, Cigna's really well run. I mean, they've been in front of a lot of things that are being difficult for other payers now.
Centene, quote unquote, back on track according to management. They swing more than $1 billion in profit in Q2. The 2026 earnings were raised. The outlook was raised, and the CFO is literally using the word fantastic. So that's a big turnaround for Centene, and they sort of set the tone last year and said it was going to take them a year to do all the hard work to get to the other side of this. But, you know, here we are, July 30th, Vic, and it seems like they've done the work they needed to do. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, they're very profitable. Their MLR was 79.2.
Goodness gracious.
Which is, you know, very, I'm going to say aggressive, very positive, but even a touch lower than the best run payers have been, traditionally. And then the ACA membership fell by 2.4 million people. So, so they now have 3.5. So, 40% of their book disappeared. And they say directly, those people that are still there are significantly more profitable. So they, I think, are doing a really good job sort of selecting where to pull away from ACA, where to maybe shape their book with price signals and different benefit structure. I don't have the details of that, but it seems like that's what they're doing. And, for this quarter, really beneficial. Now, long term, whether they can keep that up, I don't know, but it seems pretty strong. Again, I think a lot of people that had ACA coverage now maybe have opted not to have it, or they're at another platform. But Centene itself seems to be doing well, at least this year.
It's going to be a lot of uninsured people next year, Vic. Humana maintains adjusted earnings outlook, but underwhelms their investors. Their second quarter results broadly beat Wall Street expectations, however. Shares were trading 6.1% lower. Despite the loss, the stock is up 38% year to date. So, overall still trending generally in the right direction. But, why do you think, Wall Street beat them up on this one?
I just think relative to other payers, so they're making incremental improvements, or they're making improvements, but United beat pretty handily. Cigna, we just covered Cigna and Centene. Their MLR was 91.2, so not very good. But they are making progress. It just didn't, they beat their own estimates, but not what the street thought when compared to other payers, I think.
Also on the Humana front, they are exiting more Medicare Advantage plans in 2027. So just like Centene, laser focused on reaching their margin targets, going to sacrifice some plans with lower returns next year to do so. So they're going to exit 3 states and 194 counties before the end of this year. And
then for next year will be the first time when we're going to have a lot more variety in what the plans cover. Remember with Obamacare, when it first came out, they were very limited to, I think it was like gold, silver, bronze, and then maybe you could have 2 others. And now you're not limited. The Trump administration, as they do, think it's better just to be a free-for-all. And so I think we're going to see, even when they are in a state, they're going to have very different premium and coverage combinations to try to, again, shape the membership to be more profitable.
Agree. And one thing I had not taken into account, Vic, but this article from Healthcare Dive, ICHRA adoption is slowed by the ACA exchange costs and instability. So I hadn't really wrapped my head around this, but as the ACA becomes less and less viable and those premiums get ratcheted up and up, an ICHRA plan really needs to actually be viable relative to the marketplace. And if the marketplace plans are wildly more expensive than a group plan, that sort of makes ICHRA not as attractive of an option, right?
Yes, no question. I think ICHRA is an interesting way to help employers begin moving to more of a flavor of a defined benefit to a defined contribution, where I'm going to give you X amount of dollars and then spend it however you want. But in order for that to work, you have to have a healthy kind of, insurance market for people to have options. And I think this story, I agree. I had not really thought this through in the follow-on effects, but if the ACA marketplaces are not robust, that it's kind of a false choice. So you can choose anything you want, but there's only this one plan.
Right. Yeah. What did Henry Ford say? You can have any color as long as it's black.
As long as it's black. Yeah. Exactly.
Uninsured patients rise sharply, hospital reports, citing Obamacare cuts. So this is the New York Times. And this is just sort of saying, like, what happens when, the ACA is just too hard to get a real policy on. Well, people are going to be uninsured. They're still going to crash into the ED, right? Because they're going to crash into the ED more because they're not getting their basic needs met, and then something really bad is going to happen. They're going to have high acuity. It's going to be an emergency, and they're going to flood the ER. And oh, by the way, not only is that the most expensive, but they're uninsured. So it's going to lead to, huge increases in uncompensated care. This is almost certainly going to most negatively affect safety net hospitals, rural hospitals, any sector where the socioeconomic mix is more on the bottom of the K-shaped economy. So just getting harder and harder to justify taking care of, those who are not rich in this country.
Yeah, no question. And those health systems do not have enough balance sheet strength, cash reserves to really withstand uncompensated care at these levels for long. And so it's definitely worrisome. I mean, they have quotes from the bigger groups, HCAs, in this article talking. I mean, we covered them last week. They certainly are feeling the effects. I talked to a friend of mine at HCA today. He called it a significant headwind, which it certainly is. Like they are having a one-for-one shift where they used to be in a commercial ACA plan at those rates, and now they are uncovered. And, it's the same patient with the same cost, but they can't bill for it. And yet HCA has reserves and probably will be okay. Although it's a big headwind. Some of the smaller facilities, I think it's going to be really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this, Becker's hospital review often will have sort of these more like trend stories, right? Where there's sort of capturing momentum around any particular activity in the hospital market. And here that they're noting that 29 large health systems are currently in the M&A market and growing. I just have to sort of juxtapose that from the Biden administration and Lena Khan's FTC, where, I mean, these mergers were just getting thrown out left and right, right? Either the FTC was directly blocking them, or attorneys general leveraging the specter of the FTC were blocking them, or they were just sort of being abandoned, right? I remember HCA and Intermountain were two of the really big systems that just sort of abandoned, M&A activity during the Biden administration. 29 large health systems are currently in the market, and it's Advent Health, Intermountain, Prisma, Hackensack Meridian, UNC Health, Ascension, LifePoint, HCA, Baptist. So it's, Atrium, Novant, UPMC. I mean, that's a lot of activity from all the big brands. And I think they're just taking advantage of this, this buyer's market where there's going to be, I think, a lot of selling pressure. There's going to be a lot of pressure on these hospitals looking at 2027 and saying, we can't make it unless we're part of something bigger than ourselves right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe this will reduce choice, but I'm much more focused on, like, is there a hospital that you can go to within, say, a 60-minute drive?
Period.
And I have a lot more fear about that than I am that maybe there's a consolidation and the health system, there's only one. And so I think it is positive. I want systems to acquire and grow that have strong balance sheets, because I'm fearful that there's been a lot of failure in health systems. And so I think this is true, and I think it's the least bad outcome. I hope it happens. I mean, there'll be some areas of the country that I think, maybe there's not a lot of buyers for the assets. That's the more worrisome thing than HCA or Atrium or Advocate or Ascension, buy it up.
Yeah, agree. J&J joins immune reset race, paying $785 million to partner on Cell Bio Cell Therapy. This story is kicking off our Pharma section. This is an exclusive option to acquire Cell Biosciences for $2.58 billion. And it puts J&J in the mix of pharmaceutical companies developing the next generation cell therapies for autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, and so I mean, I have been watching CAR T. We've been talking about CAR T as a treatment sort of protocol across a lot of disease states, but particularly cancer, having a lot of promise. And the delivery of CAR T therapies is pretty complex. You have to do it like per person using their own cells. And this is an approach that doesn't require that. So you have, the normal production of a drug, and they have like one molecule that they can send out to the market that works. And so that has a lot of promise because it would be much more scalable, much more able to be delivered to a lot of people. And it's exciting. Whether they, it's still early, so whether they can deliver it and it is effective is hard to know, but exciting if they can.
Yeah, for sure. And argenx makes a $2 billion acquisition of Forte Bio, also on the autoimmune space, focusing on the early clinical validation in the celiac and vitiligo diseases. So another $2 billion deal happening this year. This has been an unbelievable year for pharma and specifically biotech M&A. So yet another really, really big deal across the line.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know much about this science, but it's interesting. And so hopefully it's right. Celiac's a big problem.
So going on to Health and Us, we have a couple stories. And it feels like at this point, we probably needed to just at least make a footnote about what's going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think most people who've been tracking the news are aware of the Ebola outbreak that is going on there. And, there's a really heart-wrenching but helpful and informative episode of the Daily Podcast. So you might just want to like Google Daily Podcast Ebola, and they've got some incredible reporting on the ground about what's going on there. But at this point, the Ebola virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo has killed more than 1,500 people in just 2 months, and it is causing deaths faster than officials have ever recorded. This is already the second worst outbreak, and it's well on its path to becoming the worst. And it doesn't seem that there's any real degree of control that the healthcare ecosystem there has on it at the moment. So if you listen to the podcast, you will realize how many cultural and just resource headwinds they're dealing with there. It's really, really heartbreaking. But it's worth bringing up because as this thing is continuing to develop, these things become difficult to contain. So obviously a tragedy for the DRC, but also something to watch out for the rest of the world.
Yeah, this is a really sad story. And I guess I'm hopeful that they get control over it, but it doesn't look good right now. There's not a lot of promise today. And you're right, the cultural and kind of like systematic challenges in this geography is really difficult.
Really, really hard. Okay, moving on to something a little bit brighter. Story here in Gizmodo. So we covered a couple weeks back, there's a different ring, I think it was called the Signal ring, that actually is doing real blood pressure monitoring, kind of in that lovable category. Here, Gizmodo is talking about UCSD researchers have created a ring that can passively sample and analyze your sweat to track nutrition and insulin's response. So not yet commercialized, right? Obviously, it's University of California, San Diego, really strong bio and AI university. So no surprise that it's coming out of there. But the idea that it actually, I feel like I've had Oura Ring for a very, very long time, and Vic, the sweat actually was sort of an impediment to good readings, right? It would sort of mess with the light sensors on there, and it could really sort of screw up your readings. But the idea now that the finger sweat could actually increase the capabilities of the ring to track nutrition and insulin response is really, really exciting. And I think more and more the ring is turning out to be a wonderful form factor for lovable diagnostics.
Yeah. I mean, no question. So they published it in Nature, so it's a significant publication. The way they did the trial is they had participants wear a continuous glucose monitor, which is well established, and then also the ring, and it matched it pretty well. And so they need more testing. They may commercialize it, but it's pretty promising.
So I'm hoping this kind of moves from the university into commercialization in the next year, because and also, like, I'm excited about some other ring competitors coming out on the market. I mean, I like Oura, but the Signal ring has me really excited with the blood pressure monitoring. So, okay, moving on to Web3 crypto. BNY targets $8.6 trillion transfer agency market on blockchain rails. The world's largest custodian will keep its existing system while adding a digital ownership record for tokenized funds. I was talking to some real leaders in the industry this week, Vic, in the banking space. You and I both know, and they were pointing to this, and they were saying that they thought BNY had a really strong foothold here, and that this could position them very, very well, especially as it pertains to other banks and getting in the digital currency and stablecoin game. So I think this, every week we're just going to see this drumbeat, more and more of blockchain being made into the first class transfer system for traditional finance.
Yeah, no question. BNY is one of the most established old school banks, and they're using crypto to make their infrastructure less expensive, faster, more reliable, which is brilliant. And it's great to see, a bank like BNY sort of adopting it. I mean, I've said this several times. It just means that everyone is adopting it, basically.
That's right. Keeping on that theme, also from CoinDesk here, institutional crypto trading hits a record 72% as Wall Street calms crypto's wild swings. So this is a report from market maker Wintermute that found that institutions now dominate crypto trading, driving lower volatility, selective altcoin outflows, and growth in tokenized assets. So, I mean, I think between Saylor and the impact that strategy has had in the Bitcoin world, and then, everything we're seeing in terms of blockchains being used for 24/7 trading, the tokenization, the advance of the Clarity Act. It's just, we're just moving into a world where TradFi is going to run on blockchains and securities are going to be tokenized. I mean, it's about time, I think, that we think about from a podcast perspective, like how we evolve the way we're covering this, because I think once clarity gets across the line, the way that we've been covering is almost no longer valid. And I think we need to start to analyze how it gets integrated into our worlds. How does this get integrated into the private market? How do payment rails start to make their way into healthcare? I think we're going to have to start to look for more pointed, stories, because the case we've been trying to make for, I don't know, a year and a half now, I think the point's been made.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's crypto is already here. TradFi and DeFi are the same thing. And the institutional investors flooding into crypto assets is good all around. It compresses bid-ask spreads, it compresses volatility, it makes everything less expensive. It also makes it harder for little guys like me to make outsized gains. But that is natural. That's sort of the normal process of an asset class getting institutionalized, and that's a positive sign. And I agree, we need to rethink, because these stories of like crypto is coming are no longer that interesting because crypto's here.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll think about how to refine our search on this topic, because I just think there's not much more to talk about in terms of making the point that crypto is fully a first-class citizen in the finance world. But this is a fun story. MoonPay, which is, if you've ever use any of these more eccentric wallets, MoonPay is often what you use to buy crypto, exchange your USD for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and things like that. They have a new product called Paybox, and they're putting a crypto wallet inside of Claude and ChatGPT, now letting the AI, move money autonomously, while you quote unquote stay in control. Now, I'm always leery of people promising that an LLM won't actually just go off and do whatever it wants to do. But this is a way to actually get a wallet some serious distribution, leveraging Claude and ChatGPT's omnipresence.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's a lot of solutions that could be used. I think this is a distribution play, like you say, getting MoonPay integrated into the two biggest AI platforms is a huge distribution advantage that really could make a big difference for them.
Conversely, coming from Jack Dorsey's block, they have launched Buzz, an open source workspace where AI agents sign their own work. So I've actually played with this. I played with it this weekend. And Buzz, the interface is so much like Slack, Vic. This is quite the masterpiece in an open source software release, I have to say. The interface is really intuitive. It just works. You download it, you go through the little wizard to get everything set up, and it just works. And it's very easy to set up agents, to build very specific agents. And it comes out of the box with a team of like 4, one of which is basically the coordinator agent who you regularly talk to. And then, some other agents that do research, one does writing, and then you can create more. So I created like a software development team. You can even like work with the existing agents to help you create new agents. I mean, it's super slick. Like I said, it works just like you would expect Slack to work. And then you can also add other humans in. And so it can be this place where humans are collaborating and the humans are all collaborating with the different agents. And it's truly a remarkable release from Block. But what's really cool is that the AI actions are actually signed on the Nostr network, which is Bitcoin's social network. And that's also really, really cool. And Block as a company, they used to be called Square. They changed their name to Block, giving an homage to the blockchain of Bitcoin. Block cares a lot about Bitcoin, is very focused on Bitcoin, and is also, a big proponent of Nostr. These are all sort of incredibly important to Jack Dorsey. And so we just talked about how we have, crypto being embedded in AI for distribution. And now here we have with Buzz, AI being distributed into crypto networks.
Yeah, definitely. And I have not used it yet, but super excited to that. The opportunity to have AI entities, agents, LLMs, however you configure them, having their own keys, their own identity within Buzz. So like, it's not me sort of having my AI submit something into Slack, and you can't tell if it's me or it's me using Claude. I think it's really important that it distinguishes that. So I can be in there and I can have 3, 4, 10, 20 agents, but they all have their own identity, their own keys. And so there's an audit trail. You can track who's doing what, which is really important as you bring this scale and bring in, more important, more sensitive, more enterprise kind of reliant technologies, use cases. You need that sort of audit trail. And Jack Dorsey is sort of always understanding where the market's going. And I think he sort of got in front of this, and, he's happy to, poke Salesforce and Slack in the eye as well at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So really, really cool release. And quite frankly, just making me take a harder look back at Goose, which was the open source harness that they released a long time ago, especially as, we're all starting to really question Anthropic. I mean, I think they have these great models, but given everything that's going on, it's a weird time for them. Shifting directly into the AI rundown. First story here is from Axios. Title is AI Labs Face Prisoner's Dilemma as Momentum Grows for Safety Slowdown, right? So, and this is largely about Anthropic, right? They kind of came out with all of this messaging around how careful we need to be about AI, all of their research that they came out with. Oh, it broke out and did this. Oh, it can, find all these 0-day, vulnerabilities in software. And it's not that all these things aren't true, but, they did a lot of spooking of the market. And now, I think the OpenAI hack of Hugging Face, and, look, it was not a hack. It was an exercise that was run where the LLM behaved in a way that was not expected, and it broke out of its sandbox. That's a little bit more of an accurate relaying of what happened there. But that just has triggered everybody, right? We were already on edge about AI. And so now we have petitions out there, and we have the government taking it very, very seriously that we need to consider how we will start to regulate, these labs.
No question. And I think it is, if OpenAI cannot keep an LLM in the sandbox that they designed for the LLM that they built, that I don't think any of us can claim that we have a fully secure system. We don't really know exactly how powerful these systems are until they decide to take a new approach and that the humans didn't think of. And so that's scary. I think it was scary Sam Altman has talked about it being visually scary to have this experience. So that is just true. I also don't know that the international market is going to slow down. I don't think China's going to slow down. So I don't know how we can do this and expect to compete. But I think there is a big movement to try to do something.
Agree. And just kind of an addendum to the OpenAI story, they pretty quietly updated their breach disclosure, confirming that their agent accessed 4 external services beyond Hugging Face. It was not just limited to Hugging Face. They kind of went out to a total of 5 different platforms. Modal Labs CTO confirmed that his company was one of the 4 after Reuters identified it, and 3 of the services remain unnamed. Meaning their customers have received no public notification of that. And so Congress has responded to this with a bipartisan bill. It's co-authored by Rep. Ted Lieu and Nathaniel Moran. So Ted Lieu, obviously, Democrat out of Los Angeles County. Nathaniel Moran is a Republican from Texas. And they have introduced a bill called the AI Kill Switch Act, which would require developers of the most powerful AI systems to maintain the technical capability to throttle, suspend, or shut down their models.
I think this will get a lot of attention, and it might even pass. I have no confidence that someone in DC is going to create a kill switch that if a system is breaking out of the sandbox that OpenAI has created, that it won't also have noticed there's a kill switch as well. But I agree, the government is wanting to do something, and this doesn't make me feel a lot more comfortable, but it maybe will make some people feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's gonna make a lot of people feel comfortable, and I think this is I think this is gonna be one to watch, because this is gonna tell us a lot about how the constituents across the country are messaging their House reps, right? It will be interesting to see if this bipartisan momentum continues all the way to this thing actually getting passed and sent on to the Senate. So I think this is interesting. Final story here from Wired. Google's Gemini can now stomp around as a humanoid robot. So the latest version of Google's DeepMind AI model includes a significant jump into physical AGI. And so it's now able to control every aspect of a humanoid robot, which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, so, we talked about this last week around the Google stock price going down. I think Google and Google DeepMind has bigger things they're focused on than whether their model can hit some benchmark and beats Fable 5. So they have a lot of technologists. They're very focused on research, and I think this is the next place. A world model, or a model that can understand how to move through environments. We'll attach a video in the show notes. It's worth watching. That their advancement is much better, but they are not. So a lot of the robot demos that we've seen so far, where the robot making hamburgers or folding laundry, there's been several that have come out. They're single purpose use case. So like it can do that one thing really well. Google's taking a very different approach. That they're designing this model that can, allow a humanoid robot to do anything a human can do, and they'll make progress pretty quickly. But today, it's still, I'd say, clunky. It's still, they're teaching it to do lots of things, and it's learning quickly, but it's still quite slow. Mm-hmm. So exciting progress, but I think we still have a ways to go before robots are here.
Yeah, we have a ways to go, but also time is collapsing, right? You know what I mean? So it's
we have ways to go, like 18 months. So,
right.
It's not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Great show. Thanks for thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next week.